earlier this week, reports revealed that cocaine was found inside the White House. Not just inside the White House, but in its West Wing, the area where the president works. The West Wing has the Oval Office, the Situation Room, and other important offices. It is the center of American power. How did someone manage to get cocaine into the West Wing? And who is that someone? Reports say that the white powder was found in a storage space that is used by White House staff and by guests to mostly store their phones. Somebody put cocaine there. Who found the white powder? The Secret Service did during a routine check. Panic followed, the White House was evacuated and closed down. Now, why would somebody panic at the sight of cocaine? Because for quite some time, no one knew what the white powder really was. Was it a chemical weapon? Was it anthrax? Was it a nerve agent? Or was it something even more deadly? Now that question has been answered. None of those things, it was cocaine. But here's one question that has not been answered. Who sneaked cocaine into the White House? Think about it. We are talking about one of, if not the most heavily guarded place in the United States, the West Wing of the White House. Now, the White House has made it a point to tell the media that the US President Joe Biden was not in the White House during the incident.
Can you give any more details on where the Secret Service found the cocaine in the West Wing and how it got there?
As you know, the President and the First Lady and their family were not here this weekend, as you all reported on this, and as you also know that they left on Friday and returned just yesterday.
And that wording is important because it's not only President Joe Biden, but also the First Lady and the President's son, Hunter Biden, who, of course, has a well-documented history with cocaine and which promptly became a major media furor in the United States, with a lot of people referring to that particular history. But the White House clearly is coming out with its own statements and is banking on that plausible deniability. But clearly, the entire story, the entire episode, is also a running commentary on America's ongoing drug problem, on the growing addiction and desperation that is forcing people to risk multi-layer security and get drugs into places like the White House. Now, some would say that the state also bears some of the responsibility for what is happening, and there's been a lot of debate about some of the changes that have been made to drug law in the past few years. In the last few years, for example, several American states have legalized recreation marijuana. From New York and California to Illinois and DC, anyone who's 21 years old or older can now buy marijuana. In some cities like New York, marijuana can be consumed in public places where smoking is allowed. DC permits pot in personal spaces. Now, we understand that cocaine isn't marijuana, and there's been a lot of debate and lots of statistics to show that legalizing marijuana or liberalizing the use of marijuana may not, and some would argue, should not have any impact on the consumption of hard drugs such as cocaine. But all of this clearly highlights America's drug problem, which doesn't look as if it's going away anywhere soon. Let me read out what the US National Center for Drug Abuse Statistics, or NCDAS, says. 19.4% of Americans have used illegal substances at least once. Out of the 280 million aged 12 or older, 31.9 million are drug users. According to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, or CDC, opioids are the primary driver of the spike in drug-related deaths. Between April 2020 and April 2021, 75,000 Americans died from opium overdose or other related substances to opium. The other numbers too are from 2021. Rest assured, the situation has only become worse during the pandemic. But to what end? More and more states are now legalizing recreation marijuana. Some are citing the economy and the need for cannabis revenue. Then you have New York citing equity. While legalizing recreation marijuana, the state said it would reinvest millions of dollars of tax revenues from cannabis in minority communities that have been ravaged by the war on drugs. Where has all of this led America? Let me put this question to Robert J. Cantor, who's a commentator and a recovery advocate who's been addressing the fentanyl epidemic by really utilizing the media and other forums for public policy. Robert, thank you so much for joining us. Let me actually begin by first getting your take on the white powder that was found in the White House. What's your reaction to this particular report?
I think it's embarrassing, to be quite frank with you. I would liken it to going through security at an airport, where you're already in the airport and then you put your bags through the scanner and they discover, let's say, drugs. And so the question has to be, so they found it at an entry point, the West Wing entry point of the White House, where, let's say, visitors will store their belongings before they go in. And so I think the embarrassing part is, why are they allowed to get so close to the White House with those drugs? I think it's embarrassing, but I don't think it's anything more than someone bringing recreational drugs with them.
So let me now turn to that broader question of where the U.S. is on the war on drugs. I mean, look, it used to be cocaine, it used to be heroin, it used to be poppy derivatives. There's a lot of discussion over marijuana. Now, of course, the focus seems to be fentanyl, which is where you have done a lot of your work. How do you see the war of drugs progressing? Is the U.S. anywhere closer to winning it?
No, I don't think we are closer to winning it. I have an opinion. I live and breathe the fentanyl epidemic every day. I'm in recovery from substance use disorder. My daughter is. In fact, today she's celebrating 5 years of sobriety, and she's doing fantastic. But she had an issue with her drugs, 5.5 years ago. The simple question we have to ask is, why does it keep getting worse? Like, there seems to be missing pieces that the public don't know. I don't think China is doing anything more. And again, I don't have top secret clearance, but this is what makes sense to me. China is doing nothing more than providing the precursor chemicals to the Sinaloa and Jalisco cartels. We know that. The PRC, the Chinese government, knows exactly which chemical companies are doing that. They know, and they're giving them their blessing. That's the culpability. Outside of money laundering money back into China, that's their culpability, I believe. I believe the source are the Mexican drug cartels, but not in the sense that they're just smuggling drugs in. My sources tell me that they have, military-grade equipment. There are other podcasts, Ed Calderon, Lex Fridman. If you look at the podcast on YouTube, you'll see that they freely say that the cartels, which are likened to billion-dollar transnational corporations, have this tremendous wealth and power, and which extends around the world. So the question so my point is, in this political and military climate, I actually don't think it's a solvable problem right now.
So the question of the war on drugs is not something that's been hidden in the shadows anymore. I mean, every single person by now has probably been watching Narcos and aware of the Sinaloa cartel, aware of what's been happening in Medellin. They're aware of the war on drugs. Makes it even more perplexing, because decades later, this is nothing new. It's been something which has been going on for 30 years or 40 years. No solution is being found. Or is no solution being found because there's just too much money involved?
Right. If you look back, there have been instances where the Bureau of Alcohol, and this is fact, there have been programs on the BBC about this. The United States Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms actually allowed the sales of weapons to one of the cartels so that they could wipe out the other cartels. This is a fact. So don't think that there's no corruption that's going on within our government.
All right, Robert, thank you so much for joining us with that perspective.